There are some really shocking and eye-opening things that I think we need to talk about. Women are not as safe as they used to be in this country. Do they think they suddenly land on our shores and go like, oh, I can't wait to protect women and enhance their values? No, what's happening? And now we're being silenced and we're not being allowed to talk about it. And frankly, that to me beggars belief, that we would sacrifice the safety and security of our women and our young girls at the altar of political correctness.
You don't mind getting a cat called or whatever?
Of course I don't. It's funny that a man is telling a woman when I should feel threatened and when I shouldn't.
You don't think I shouldn't be able to have that view because I'm a man, though?
It's a bit strange. It's like me telling you what a morning glory feels like. Regularly having sort of strange advances that I'm not getting from the Anglo-Saxon native-born community, which is not even about skin colour. It's not about skin colour.
Are you concerned with people calling you a racist?
So, am I a racist? That's a funny-looking racist by anybody's standards.
Is it true that we don't keep statistics around crime committed by nationality or ethnicity, is it?
Yeah. So the statistics at best are patchy. Of course, you know, if someone commits a crime, one of the first things they have to do if you're arrested is identify themselves. So really, you should then know their home address, their date of birth, and therefore their nationality, you would think. But nothing is coordinated or correlated, which is what they're doing in other Western countries. And when you look at some of the trends emanating out of countries such as Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands, Germany, France, where they do keep this information, there are some really shocking and eye-opening things that I think we need to talk about. The reason I know that we definitely do not keep these statistics is I've spoken to someone who very much was connected to this work, and they reassured me that no, we don't keep them. Well, it didn't reassure me actually, but they did say yes, no, this isn't something that we do. Now, I think that that is a willful choice. That because it'd be very easy to do. I think that's a willful choice, and I think it's a perilous one.
It is scary. So, what are some of the things that you've been finding in other countries, the reports they've been keeping, and why is this relevant with regards to mass immigration?
Okay, so there's various sources, open sources that people can use to do what I've done. First of all, there's an organised crime index. It's a fascinating website. Just Google organised crime index, and it comes up with a sort of heat map of the world. And you can click on a country, zoom in, and read about their profile, basically, in terms of criminality. And what you learn is when it comes to organised crime, the vast majority of that in the United Kingdom is being perpetrated by foreign gangs. That's not surprising. That's probably the case in multiple other countries. So you're talking about your drug dealing, your people trafficking, your human trafficking, insurance fraud, the list goes on. And a lot of these are increasingly being perpetrated by Albanian gangs who are consolidating the underworld. Drugs are coming largely from Afghanistan via Pakistan. You started to get some Turkish gangs around the fringes. So that information is available on OSINT, if you will, open source intelligence. In terms of other crimes, which are perpetrated by individuals and therefore are not organised, that is where we're not containing that information. But where other countries do, and I looked specifically at sexual assaults and rapes, because I'm beginning to get a very visceral sense that women are not as safe as they used to be in this country. And I think we need to get to the root causes of that. When you look at other countries, there are very clear, definitive trends that a disproportionate number of rapes and sexual assaults are being perpetrated by people who are not domestic-born individuals. In a lot of Scandinavian countries, what the statistics are showing is there is a huge number of sexual assaults and rapes carried out by people from the Middle East and North Africa. And if you correlate that with inward migratory flows, one can draw a conclusion that what has happened as a direct result of sizable inward migration from countries where men have a very different culture to our own, that there has been this compounding effect of women ending up potentially more vulnerable in society. And, you know, I was speaking about this the other day, and where do you point the finger of blame for all of this? People in the middle classes, when they work in, you know, Oxford University or the BBC, and they're sitting next to somebody, a colleague who is from one of these countries, will find this person to be charming and educated and pleasant, and they probably are. And they probably share our values. Those values, even within the countries of origin, are going to be dramatically different from young men who, even in their own countries, are sort of somewhat disenfranchised, who aren't well educated. The goat herder from Afghanistan is going to have a different attitude towards women from an Afghan man who worked at the government level as an interpreter, went on to work at the BBC. That's very clear.
Do you see that Ross Kemp thing? Ross Kemp, for non-Brits, is just a celebrity guy, does documentaries, and he spoke to these 3 guys about doing that, what they do to women and those kinds of things, and said, don't you feel bad about it? And every time they were trying to answer the question, they were trying to almost humor him and indulge him, and they would go, well, I suppose I do feel bad because maybe I'll end up with a child and I didn't want it. But they couldn't get themselves to a place where they might feel sympathy for the woman. There were 3 or 4 guys he was talking to. It was just so foreign to them.
Do people think that when young men are coming from war-torn areas, or impoverished areas, such as North Africa, the Middle East, where we know there are barbaric practices against women, this is well documented, we know that the Taliban aren't exactly a Me Too movement, do they think they suddenly land on our shores and go like, oh, I can't wait to protect women and enhance their values? No, what's happening? There's a number of things happening. Number one is actually one of the cynical methods people traffickers are using to recruit young men to buy their services, if you will, is saying, oh, look over here, look at the women in England. This is happening. These sorts of things are circulating on TikTok as bait. At the same time, in their own countries, women are going to be very covered up or not even outside without an escort. And they have mobile phone handsets, and everyone's smartphones now have access to pornography. Strangely not in many Muslim countries where those sites are blocked and banned, but over here, of course, they are. And then what they're most likely to see in the majority of pornography are westernized women. They're not seeing the sort of women they see back at home. So that's another element. Then, of course, they come and they realize on a Saturday night, most girls are going out in mini skirts and are drunk, something else they'll have never seen before. Then on top of this, there's another layer, which is if they happen to be attending a mosque with more radical viewpoints, they could potentially have an imam or cleric telling them that white Western girls do not value themselves. In fact, they are a free-for-all. They're accessible. You don't treat our own women like this, but these girls, they don't deserve your respect, so do what you like. You mix this all together as a cocktail with, at the same time, a lot of women especially as empaths are the most likely to be standing there with placards saying refugees welcome, frankly. But also they're being educated to look out for their subconscious bias. So when they've got these young guys coming up to them who, they recognize are from a different culture, going like, oh, I want to talk to you, I want to come back to your house, da, da, da. Instead of listening to their gut and thinking, I'm not sure that I should be enabling this person to access my personal space or be in a position where I could be vulnerable with this person, they're probably going to be thinking to themselves, I'm a racist if I don't do this, or this person deserves my sympathy. Poor thing, he must have been through so much. It's no wonder that you're seeing this huge spike in rape and sexual assaults. And I'm not pointing the finger at nationalities because, like I said, there's a huge diversity within a nation and within a culture. I'm pointing the finger at the fact that policies have been put in place by governments that have created this horrible systemic problem now in the West, and now we're being silenced and we're not being allowed to talk about it, and it's not being addressed. And frankly, that to me beggars belief that we would sacrifice the safety and security of our women and our young girls at the altar of political correctness.
It's difficult to overstate how important some of the work you've been doing looking into this is. And I think because so many of us are worried, we've got this social stigma around us, this sort of tribal thing that keeps us in line, and there's mostly a good thing so that we don't go out and be racist when we shouldn't. And we're constantly saying to ourselves, and people say to me when I raise the issue of mass immigration, well, come on, you're being a racist because no stats bear any of this out. And there is concern around numbers. It's huge numbers. So of course there will be individuals who commit crimes, but does it mean that the actual that there's actually you're actually any more likely to be abused or attacked by somebody from another country or whatever? And you've actually gone and found the stats in other countries where they record it.
Yeah.
Are you concerned with people calling you a racist?
No, because that's just a ridiculous label, and I know I'm not. It's that simple. A bit of background on my own adult life. I After graduating university, I went to work in India and worked on a broadsheet newspaper there called The Hindu. I then went to live and work in China. After that, I went to live and work in Ghana. I used to live in the Muslim neighborhood in Ghana. Ghana is a fascinating country because it's both very Christian and very Muslim, and they rub along brilliantly. They have no social tension between the two religions. I have then subsequently gone on to spend time in Cameroon. I had a former partner who is half Algerian, half Cameroonian. And then back in 2017, I lived and worked in Kenya for a whole year. Again, it's a very mixed population in Kenya. You've got as many Muslims as you might do Christians. A lot of their tensions there tend to be on tribal grounds, not religious grounds. So am I a racist? That's a funny looking racist by anybody's standards. Am I a realist? Yes. Do I think that when you're doing important work and trying to break taboos, that you're going to have people who are worried about what you're saying, who are uncomfortable about what you're saying, who go as far as attacking you? Well, of course they're going to. Should that stop somebody from doing what they know to be right and what they know to be important? No.
I was reading, I can't remember what it's called. There's a fantastic essay that a guy called Chris Ryan sent me from 2004. Someone wrote about taboos and how they change with time. And he talked about, imagine, say, a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old woman who's gone and lived in all these different countries and had a really interesting life, and then goes back to meet a 15-year-old girl, and the different taboos that they would have, because the 15-year-old, most things that the 30-year-old would come back and say would be offensive to the 15-year-old who's only ever just been at their school, had their little sort of life, and they imagine that the whole world works just like theirs does. I'm really interested to hear that you've had not just some experience, but a hell of a lot of experience.
Well, what's fascinating actually is when you go and live in these countries, they don't have this ridiculous straitjacket of taboo, which by and large is now being deployed in the West as luxury ideology.
Well, they have other taboos, though, don't they?
They have other taboos, but I think they're far more direct and open in talking about things as societies.
You could, in a Muslim society, you couldn't, make an image of the Prophet Muhammad.
Right. Okay. So they have other cultural mores and normatives for sure. And actually, we're very good, I think, as Brits, by and large, not always, but certainly when I go to Morocco a lot. It's one of my favorite countries. I don't walk about it, even if it's 40 degrees. I'm not walking around in a vest top and a short skirt. I'm covering myself up for two reasons. One, it's not what they do there. So it'd be very disrespectful to them. But number two, I'm going to be getting a lot of backlash if I do that and unwanted attention. So that's common sense. The problem that we have at the moment is we have nations, but we don't have nation states. People are increasingly able to come from country A, go and live in country B, and because we live in a completely interconnected world with the internet, they can come and live in the UK as an economic unit, but they can stay completely assimilated and in touch with their previous life back at home. They can follow only news from, say, Pakistan within their family unit, their friendship group, and their mosque only speak in Urdu or something. They can be in the United Kingdom, setting up a family here, getting money from the state, and having absolutely nothing to do with the country in which they live. And this is a problem. That is a mass failure of integration. And no entity that needs to share resources and living space will survive having that level of fragmentation. No, it's human nature. It's tribal. There's been failed experiments of this kind around the world. Very often the finger of blame is pointed at the British for what we did in the colonial era. One of the things we did was draw arbitrary borders and invented countries, bringing together a disparity of tribes with different languages. And some of those countries are still fraught with intertribal warfare today. So we know this doesn't work. And yet we're pretending that this can work back here somehow, that somehow we're going to get this right without even putting in the effort to try and address these problems.
Have we not always, to an extent, had these issues? Maybe the Jews would be in a bit of a Jewish community, the Greeks would be in another, the Hindus would be over there.
We've always had a degree of sort of community segregation for sure, but I think there's almost like a Hooke's law principle of elasticity and how far that can stretch. I think the problems come about not so much in the segregation of a community within themselves who might keep themselves to themselves. We've got long-established Chinese communities in this country. You go to Chinatowns, and I don't think anybody's ever had a problem with there being a Chinatown because they don't tend to dislike the values of the native population. We have a problem when it comes to certain communities who have a very different and sometimes orthodox opinion of how culture should work, which is in direct friction with the way we do things here. And that is when you end up with big problems.
I like what you say about elasticity. There has to be a point. I had a debate with a quite a woke friend of mine the other day who's not actually from the UK. And so we had this sort of big debate, and, it got quite heated, as they always do. And then we were fine after. But I started saying, immigration, it does seem to be mass immigration that may be at the point where it is too much too soon. And he was interrupting me before I even finished the sentence to say, immigration's good, it's done this, it's done that, I'm very much for immigration. And I said, well, you're not, that doesn't even make sense. I'm for immigration. To what point? What if 1 billion people were coming into England this year? Would that be okay? So, well, obviously not. So I was like, right, so you're not just for immigration. There has to be a point. And where we're disagreeing is where that point is. Everyone agrees that there has to be a point.
It's not so much that we're disagreeing about it, it's we're not allowed to have that conversation.
Yeah.
That is where we have a problem. And governments know this because almost every political party has basically said in manifestos for the past 20 years, we're going to lower the rate of immigration down to the tens of thousands. So they know. They know. And yet they're not doing it.
Yeah. Why not?
I don't know whether it's because they pander to big business and the idea that immigration adds on to GDP, whether they don't have solutions of other societal issues we have, such as a work shyness, such as our welfare system perhaps being too generous. There's going to be compromises and tough decisions that need to be made. And a lot of politicians are more worried about losing their seat than delivering what is best for the country. So that would be my interpretation. But actually, I don't know why not. Because when you're getting people coming in that are grossing over 1 million into a country whose population is 68 million, then that is actually eye-wateringly dangerous and stupid and feckless and reckless. And that is happening. So why not? I don't know. I actually don't know.
Murmurings about the aging population and needing a young workforce to come in, and other people say, well, the solution then is to encourage families in the UK to have more children, to have but it's
pronatalist policy would go a long way. I think that would certainly be good. It'd have to be a targeted one, though. That would upset a lot of people if you turned around and said, we're going to offer child support to people who are born here, but those coming in from outside don't get it. But that's what we should do. I mean, why should we have it any other way? It seems mad if people are coming in from a completely different country where they're not prepared to assimilate and are having a multitude of children, which are then paid for by the state. And people like me who pay the highest rate of tax feel like I'm unable to have children because I can't afford to do so because I actually go out and work. Then something is clearly very wrong with this system. A country is supposed to be set up. The whole point, it's a bit like an insurance policy, isn't it? A country. You work, you pay into the system gives back to you. You don't work and pay into the system for the system not to give back to you, but ask someone else to come in and they get that instead. That is just not even the concept of a nation state. That is crazy.
But we have to be careful, because once people actually are in here legally and they've immigrated, they are then. Are they British citizens, or if they've become that?
Well, they should become British citizens first before they qualify for certain rights and privileges. In Switzerland, you have to live and work for 10 years before you're allowed to buy property.
Interesting.
So this is another argument I've got. This is not just about talking about the impoverished coming in and living off welfare and becoming a net beneficiary rather than a net contributor economically. This is also about how the fact that our housing market is being used as some sort of high interest rate bank account for a lot of foreign people. They're coming in and buying up huge amounts of housing stock, particularly in our cities, and they don't even live in those houses. You go to new developments in London and they have brochures for a block of flats that's yet to be built in only Mandarin or in Arabic. And people think, I want to invest in property in London because it just goes up and up and up and up and up. And in 10 years' time, I can sell it for double the price. That's better than getting a blimmin' Swiss bank account. And who suffers? The Brits. Who can't afford to buy those properties. I mean, that's madness. Is it wrong to say you can't have this unless you have been here for X number of years?
But they're still bringing money into the country.
They're not. The money's sitting in, probably a foreign entity, a multinational corporation developer. It's sitting in their bank account. And then what happens is the next person who buys it puts the money back in their bank account. It transits through. Yeah. It launders through. It isn't coming into our economy.
That does seem mad. With regards to sort of maybe more middle, lower class immigrants rather than sort of the oligarchs and everyone, when they come in, I don't know that I agree that they should have more restrictions placed on them. Because I feel like once people are in here and they're settled here, you want them to have every chance of making a go of it and getting richer and wealthier. And
Right. So, okay, fine. Let's have somebody who wants to come here tomorrow, and they come here and immediately have a baby and don't go to work and want me to pay for that baby. I don't think that's fair.
No.
I don't think many people think that's fair. So there has to be some sort of point at which, most countries, if you want to get citizenship, you show your dedication to that country. And the other thing you do that I think you ought to do if you want to become a British citizen, the passport from whence you came is ripped up and thrown in the bin. You don't get dual nationality. I'm sorry, but you show your commitment to a country if you want to go and live there and integrate there and be part of it and contribute to it. You learn the language. What we've got right now in balkanized communities are people living here, entire streets not speaking English. And that is not an exaggeration. Yeah. That's a reality.
There was that weird interview that someone did with Nigel Farage where they tried to sort of get him. And it didn't make any sense to me because they were saying, well, don't your kids... Because he said there are places you can go where they don't speak English. And they said, well, Nigel, don't your kids speak other languages? And really the interviewer proved his point for him. That Nigel's kids were able to speak languages of other cultures.
His former wife was German, and they speak both German and English.
Yeah.
And
it made no sense. But they took it as like a win. Like, aha, you see, he said some people don't speak English in England, but Nigel's kids speak German. It's like, yeah, but they also speak English. Like that, it didn't make any sense. That's how much they want to sort of get at people. They don't use much logic. Ireland's really struggling, isn't it? And I find it ironic because Ireland, I mean, I speak a fair bit about Israel, Palestine, and all those things. Ireland has historically been, I mean, I think it's fair to say, and I don't mean all Irish people because a lot of Irish people watch this show, but a lot of anti-Semitism in Ireland because I think they see the binary kind of oppressed and oppressor situation. They see themselves in Ireland as oppressed historically. And as soon as there was sort of one attack about a year ago, the Irish people went absolutely mad. And to me, what would it be like to be in Israel where they're getting dozens and dozens, hundreds of attacks every day? So they suddenly had a moment of it. Now things are spicing up, and the population, I think I heard you say, is sort of 40% non-Western migrants in Ireland.
Ireland. I said at one point, there's going to be insurrection. It's going to start in Ireland. Actually, I was wrong. It started in Britain. Actually, it's here right now. That accelerated faster than I expected, and it's pretty horrible. It's really unpleasant to watch. But Ireland, culturally are conservative. Largely a Catholic country, have religion far more than we do, frankly speaking, and live in communities. By the sheer geography of Ireland, they live in communities that are very tight-knit, where people still know each other and knock on each other's doors, and doors are left open and they're in and out of each other's houses. And so the impact perhaps on those communities is going to feel even more visceral than it is in parts of the United Kingdom. Because, of course, in the United Kingdom, where you've got high levels of inward migration, London's absorbed this for, decades. In fact, London's history, it's always been this way. And so that impact of cultural change is perhaps less or felt less acutely by people in London. Where actually now, if you are a born Brit in London, you're the minority. If you're just born in Britain, you're the minority. I'm not even talking about ethnicity, and I'm not even talking about second generation, first generation. I'm talking about if you're just simply born in Britain, you're already a minority in London. But when you look at some of these other places, it's interesting. One of the huge conflagrations has happened in Sunderland, right? I know Sunderland very well. And this is a city whose demography has always been, white working class, a massive percentage. And recently, Sunderland City Council and Sunderland University said we want to be a safe haven for refugees. And so there's been a mass influx. Now, you do that sort of cultural change overnight somewhere in Sunderland, and it's going to be felt far more keenly than if you're doing it in a city which has always attracted this gradual increase of immigration. But it's not even about whether people are ready for this. It's not even about, what speed can we get away with? It's about saying, why can't we, as the native population, say we want to defend our country and our culture and our values and our heritage? Why can't we be proud of that and say that this is worth preserving when we make such efforts to allow people to preserve theirs, even at the expense of our own? If you're going to say that these people must be allowed to freely practice religion, wear what they want, speak in whatever language they want, diversity is great, why can't part of that smorgasbord be us saying that about ourselves? Instead of self-flagellating constantly about somehow we are evil, that we've been historic oppressors. Every single lesson coming out at the moment is we must be ashamed of ourselves. Everyone's better than us. And we must, in many respects, work towards an end position where we seek to replace ourselves. Again, that just goes completely against humanity and human instinct. That's never going to work.
I wonder if it's just a fear of replicating what's happened in previous regimes, such as the Nazis. I know there's Godwin's law. Everyone's going to mention the Nazis in every conversation, but those were sort of aspirations of the Nazis, wasn't it? Be proud of our own culture for once. Everybody else is trying to push us down. We're victims, and look what happened next. So I'm not trying to equate what you're saying.
I think of course there is. Of course there is that element, and everyone should be minded to learn from history. But if they were, they would also know the social experiment being conducted at the moment is going to end in conflagration, which we're beginning to see. So one must be mindful of history, but one mustn't seek to change it or erase it. And there seems to be something very, very strange happening at the moment, perverse, in fact, from a national attitude standpoint, where people within positions of privilege, influence, and power actually want to denigrate and destroy our belief in our own country. And that is weird to me. That I don't understand.
Yeah, the riots, a lot of it seemed to have been caused, or some of it seems to have been caused by what people are seeing as two-tiered policing, two-tiered governance, the Keir Starmer coming out so harshly on the rioters, the white British rioters, saying these people are the worst people. And he didn't say the same thing for the guy that stabbed children, who clearly that is the worst people.
Well, we've had for a long time now. It's not two-tier policing. It's not two-tier this. It's not two-tier that. It's a completely distorted morality where there's morality that's different for one group and from another. And that isn't how morality works, I'm afraid. Where basically it's almost as if minorities have a monopoly on feeling pushed out, isolated, ill-treated, left behind. That they have a monopoly on saying that my lot in life isn't fair. And that if you happen to be white working class, you don't get to say that at all. You've got to shut up if you suggest that. What is wrong with you? White privilege, and so on and so forth. And if you photo negative what has happened in the past couple of weeks, if you'd had a circumstance where a ethnic minority soldier had been stabbed to death by a white skinhead, would we be saying that person's got mental illness? That this is, anybody who is able to pick up a knife and stab another human being is clearly deranged, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But would we be making that argument? I don't know. If we had whatever, you pick your minority, having a dance class with little children, and a white man had gone in, a white teenager, high school shooter type mentality, had gone in and, begun relentlessly hacking them up, murdering them in the most brutal fashion possible. And that community came out and rioted. Would we be saying they're appalling, they're far right? Or would we be saying we need a moment of reflection? We need to learn lessons. We need to see why these people are so upset. I'm sorry, but there would be a full-scale inquiry. There'd be foundations set up. There'd be support networks meeting community leaders. We wouldn't hear the end of it. So why is it now a shock to people that the white working classes, having seen a succession of events that to their eyes look a particular way, have a hugely emotional reaction to this? Because it's not even over the course of the past 2 weeks. It's been going on for a long time. There were no riots after 9/11. There were no riots after 7/7. There were no riots after what happened at Manchester Arena. But what has happened as a result of all those things is, rather than address some of the underlying issues, we've been increasingly silenced and increasingly vilified. It's gone the opposite direction. And what staggered me about Sir Keir Starmer's reaction to all of this on 2 occasions now is that when I'm not in no way condoning the horrors that we've seen take place in those riots. They're vile. It is thuggery, okay? But if you turn around and then point your finger at these people and call them your monsters, your thugs, your far right, is that going to make them suddenly look in the mirror and go, probably shouldn't have smashed that shop window. Gosh, I better go clear it up. Or is that going to anger them further?
Yeah.
When you look at the flip side, and you had plenty of evidence of Muslim men getting together and almost forming ad hoc militias, picking up weapons and going through the streets shouting Allahu Akbar. Is it going to make them suddenly go, oh, I better go shake the hand of that person and get along with them and put down my weapons?
Yeah.
No, it's going to increase their feeling of righteous indignation and justified anger, because they'll think, gosh, these people, the Prime Minister has now told me that they're the ones in the wrong and we're the target. We are the victim here. So it is essentially just dousing the flames with an accelerant. It's mad. I looked at Twitter this morning, and the Australian Prime Minister was doing a speech about increasing the threat level in Australia. And he said that there are Australians embracing all forms of extremism at a rate in which we've never seen before. And as the temperature goes up, we need to use words to cool it down. Something along those lines. I paraphrase. That's the right approach. You don't turn around and say it's just you and call them monsters. It's like a kid having a tantrum, right? The Prime Minister needs to be in listening mode. He needs to be like a good parent. And when a kid is out of control, right, you have to go, get back over here, you tell them off. But if you don't understand why they've gone bonkers, if you just shout at them and then ignore them, you think that kid's going to learn good behavior and discipline? You think that's going to resolve the situation?
It's so bizarre, wasn't it? It was just, you're right, twice to come out and speak that way. And you go, who is this for? Who has written your speeches? Where has this come from? And it feels like it's for the Have I Got News for You guys. It's for Ian Hislop. I mean, who else is this for?
He's politicised the situation. Do you think most of those people kicking in shop windows even know what right wing is? I mean, do you think they identify as liking, I don't know, free markets, capitalism? Yeah. They're just people. They're just,
Yeah. Well, don't disparage the... they're not all idiots, are they? Or maybe they are.
No, what's so sad is this started, right, that there were organised gatherings before this turned into huge conflagration, which were peaceful, actually, frankly speaking. And they've been hijacked, and, hooligans and criminals have used it as an excuse, as a cover to run rampant. And there needs to be a separation of saying, actually, at the beginning, there was a huge phalanx of people who are desperately and existentially concerned about their country, their children, and their future. And those concerns need to be listened to.
Is there a way to have immigration, even significant numbers of immigration, that can work for this country?
Again, when we say significant numbers, where do we draw the line? I think we need to start that conversation by asking that question for the first time, because that hasn't been asked, has it? So actually, we need to do studies and reports and look into where we reach critical absorption that sort of begins to jeopardize integration. There are multiple things that I think need to be put in place straight away. One being, before you start getting entitlement to whatever, benefits and welfare the native population have, you have to have lived here and committed to being here for a certain number of years. Already you have to have been here 5 years and take a test to become a UK citizen. Fine. Well, let's make sure that you don't have all of the benefits and privileges of the native born until you've done that. That seems fine. That's how most countries operate, actually. We also need to be doing things like where you've got particular mores that are in conflict with our own, that demarcate us from others. You need to get rid of those. Most Muslim countries ban the burqa for security reasons. We should do that. There also needs to be an absolute understanding, without any compromise, that you learn English and you speak English. We are the lingua franca of the world, and language is so important. Communication is so important. If you're going to say hello to your neighbor, can I borrow a cup of sugar, and have a good relationship with that person, if you're not speaking the language, you are not integrated. That needs to happen. And then, things such as home ownership, so on and so forth. The trappings of being a citizen of a nation state should be available to the citizens of a nation state, and there needs to be a qualifying criteria for that. I think if we began to slowly address those problems to begin with, and also started becoming far more discerning about immigration. When you get people, as I've alluded to earlier, who are educated with skill sets, they probably are going to integrate far more rapidly and far more easily than people who are not. And so we do need to bring talent into this country, not just people who, frankly, are not going to be able to fit in and contribute.
That the aspect around language is really interesting, because I think a lot of like progressives constantly say, oh yeah, but how hard, you go learn a language, or it's not so easy to learn a language, and all of those kinds of things. A friend of mine who's from Colombia, he says he can't believe all the woke people over here, and he says to them, to get them started, to sort of prime them for this discussion, he'll start talking about all the English or Americans or whoever it is who come to Colombia and don't even bother to learn the language, and the woke progressives are up in arms. They go, what a bunch of lazy idiots, they go to Colombia and they don't even learn Spanish, what idiots. And then he goes, yeah, and then he subtly tries to get onto the discussion of immigration to the UK and says it, and then they're suddenly a bit uneasy, and they go,
right.
ooh.
Well, they exactly, when people look at the sort of the Costa Brava lot who've gone over there, haven't bothered learning Spanish,
just for Americans,
and they just want to sit
just
there.
They won't never understood how you said
Costa
Brava
is sort of like a cheap holiday resort on the southern coast of Spain. You get a lot of Brits who might go and settle there, who, want to sit there and drink a pint of lager, don't speak Spanish, want to eat their full English breakfast and watch the football. And like you said, the woke lot look at them as revolting. How can you go to Spain and not integrate?
Yeah. There we go.
But do you know what? The whole point is, and I talked earlier about the concept of luxury ideology. Wokism is about classism. It's that simple. Once upon a time, before globalization and the latest technological revolution, if you were wealthy, you could get on an aeroplane, go on holiday and come back with a tan. You could buy a new car. You could have a smartphone. Well, actually, things like finance and short haul flights means that those things are accessible to the vast majority of people. So how do you now show your status? You show that you have all this privilege and tolerance because you are not at the sharp end of the things that the working classes are. Then you can sneer upon them as ignorant, and suddenly a way to elevate and show that you are someone special, that you are, superior, is to have this faux sense of moral superiority and point at everybody else and go, they are, dreadful. That's what wokeism is. It's classism in disguise.
La nostalgie de la boue, as they say in France, the nostalgia of the mud. A lot of this has happened like 100 years ago, and a lot of French middle class people would, to separate themselves from others who, as you say, were able to afford things that they had exclusively been able to afford, would then go back the other way and sort of wear bad, horrible clothes and all of these kinds of things to sort of show that they were these big lefty woke. I mean, woke wasn't a word back then, of course, le wokisme or whatever. So it's this nostalgia for mud kind of thing. Slightly different to what you're saying about the words, of course, but the kind of woke, I'll screw your flights to Spain and all of that stuff. I don't know. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It makes sense to me. I was sort of thinking in my head, are we going to get to the point of off with their heads and, sort of French Revolution in the UK?
I just wanted to say a French sounding thing. So you mentioned the other day a wokism, love lived experience.
I know, yeah.
Yeah. That video's got like 1 million views. You were talking about, call me a racist,
right.
or yeah.
I mean, it's funny because this is what I mean about two-tier policing. No, we've got two-tier morality, right? Only certain people get certain things like victim status. So being a white middle-class woman, I can't have a lived experience because it's bound to have been wonderful and joyful of all the privilege that God himself could have given. And as it turns out, if you look like me with long blonde hair and walk about in certain communities of London, you're far more likely to attract certain interest from the opposite sex than perhaps if I didn't look this way. And so that is my lived experience. And so when other women, because, middle-class women are the absolute worst in being vicious and vile. Again, it's the luxury ideology thing. It's the new Balenciaga handbag. When they say, this has never happened to me, I don't recognize you, you disgust me, you don't stand up for womanhood, I'm like, all right, you live in leafy Hampstead, you're 50 years old, you probably get Ubers and don't get the tube. So no, actually, you probably don't have what I have. I mean, that's just true. We can all play that game if we want to. If my experience is going to be different to yours based upon, my particular qualities. Again, you cannot have a monopoly on these things that's given to just one set of people. And this is what is behind the whole, eruption now of the white working classes in the United Kingdom going berserk.
Yeah.
They're fed up with this.
What was the reaction to that video? Because as I say, it exploded. I mean, have you been shouted at a lot?
I don't look at one. No, I haven't actually. I don't read comments of things. I think that I'm a broadcaster and I'm here to do work. I'm not here to sort of infinitesimally ruminate on, whether people are saying nice things or unpleasant things. Every now and then when I glance down comments, I'm usually quite reassured that the vast majority of people on my side. But you only have to see one thing that is particularly horrible and vicious that it can throw you off balance. And I don't need to be thrown off balance right now because my work is important. But what I have had is a lot of messages from women, lots, particularly via Instagram. That seems to be the sort of most female-friendly platform. I don't really use it, but I'm now making sure I read my messages regularly because a lot of women are getting in touch with me saying, thank you so much for speaking about this. And I'm getting so many testimonials. And I'm thinking to myself at some point, I might just keep them anonymized, but copy and, clip all these things, screen grab them and create a tableau of the sort of messages I've received of other people's lived experiences. And then hopefully we can have a proper conversation because what's going on out there is awful.
I mean, the problem with lived experience for you is the same issue we have when it is used by the progressive side. It's just all subjective and it can always feel like it's more from a certain minority or whatever. But that's not to say it should be dismissed either. Is your lived experience then that you get heckled or I think you said actually in your video you don't mind getting a cat called or whatever.
Of course I don't. I mean, do you know, I grew up with sort of builders wolf whistling out of vans. I'm not some sort of, like hysterical, hyperbolic, I'm a victim type of woman. Hell no.
Well,
I don't
catcalling
care
is not
about
great
that.
though, is it? I get what you're saying.
But there's a big difference. Look, you're a man, okay? You
have done on my chromosomes.
Well, you probably can fight in the Olympics boxing.
I'm just about to sign up. I've never had much success in any other sports.
Oh, so. This is your opportunity. Yeah. Los Angeles, 2028, whenever it is.
Yeah, great.
But
I never
the difference.
I never did. I never had a feeling. I don't really want to do that.
You don't want to, but also you would know the difference instinctively that there's one thing about if, you're a married man, I think.
Yes.
As a single man, if you went into a bar and there's a woman and you wanted to talk to her, there are certain social cues you go through and you sort of might make eye contact and then say, how are you? You don't go up to say, I want to come back to your house and then follow her out the blimmin' pub.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
I wouldn't have done either. I'd have stood in the corner wanting to speak all night and then just gone home.
But there's a very different way of approaching things. And do you know what the other thing is? I don't necessarily think, like I was saying earlier, that the men from different cultures who are doing these things even have an awareness that they're not supposed to. Because they're not from here. So why would they know?
So just to give people an idea, so what you're saying is the wolf whistling is fairly harmless by
because people sort of know they know limits, and if a man whistles out of a van and it goes by, he's not pulling over that van and coming to follow you down the street. It's about that feeling of harm and security.
I suppose some women would say, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't know that some wolf whistlers might go and grab them.
Well, those women are, sort of histrionic, frankly. That's ridiculous.
Well, there are victims
when the van's gone down the road. Come on.
There are, after all, white British.
Do you know, but this is my problem, right? This is my problem with today's ridiculous victimhood society, where basically all of our basic instincts, our animal instincts, our gut instincts, our normal ways of communicating, 80% of how we communicate is via body language. That is being eroded to either say you've got to feel under threat all the time and too terrified to go and speak to this person and all men are evil and all men might attack you and the patriarchy, or these people are necessarily wonderful because they've been through a lot and they're from a different culture. So, can't we just use common sense? God gave us, or nature gave us, a huge amount of capability of reading a situation, predicting how things are going to unfold, having an instinct of when we're safe and not safe. And what we're doing with this absolute mind-bending rubbish that we're getting today is deliberately attacking and eroding all of that through these concepts of bias and prejudice. And when you start talking about this on a subconscious level, I mean, you're gaslighting people to not listen to themselves.
But there are plenty of times where it goes the other way, where it doesn't seem so bad, or you think you're safe, and then you're not. There was that policeman, wasn't there, who took.
So that's an example of a man who massively abused his position of power knowingly by showing a young woman a police badge. I mean, that's one incident.
Horrible.
Of course, there are going to be things where the self-defense mechanism doesn't always work.
The wolf whistle is sort of a sign for those women to go, oh gosh. okay, I've got to be on alert now.
It's funny that a man is telling a woman when I should feel threatened and when I shouldn't.
Well,
And
I don't buy into
I-
identity politics. I can have any opinion.
I don't think that that's the case at all. And I
You
don't
don't think I shouldn't be able to have that view because I'm a man, though? You don't think that?
No, I'm not saying that, but it's a bit.
I'm not woke, so it doesn't matter. It's not going to work.
Strange. It's like me telling you what a morning glory feels like. I don't know.
So, I think you could tell me plenty of things based on your experience of the world that men generally do feel that maybe I might disagree with you with. I wouldn't say because you're a woman you can't tell me that. You might be right.
No, I didn't say you can't tell me that, but you're sort of saying that women feel threatened when someone whistles from a van, and I'm saying I really don't think many do. I really don't think many do.
Well, people will comment
they will feel very threatened if whatever, regardless of the colour of someone's skin, if that person is following them down the street.
And are you suggesting that is what happens more often from people from other cultures?
Yeah.
Rather than a wolf whistle, it's a following?
Yeah.
And has that happened to you?
Yeah.
What does it feel like?
Horrible. I was on the phone to my mum at the time. It was broad daylight, and I was walking back from the shop, and I crossed 2 junctions to the end of my road, and there was a man in I think they're called a polcot hat, those Afghan hats that fold up, walking really close to me, going blah, 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 chuntering away. And I was like, okay, this is weird. So I sort of pick up my pace. So he's following me, he's shadowing me, and I walk down my street, and I live in a cul-de-sac, and he's still there. And I'm like, he's following me. And I say to my mum, someone's following me, and just stay on the phone. So I start doing a U-turn and going back up my street, pretending I was just having a conversation, that this wasn't where I lived. Thinking, and you start panicking. Your heart's beating like this. You think, if I had to scream right now, this thought goes through your head, if I had to scream, could I? Would the noise come out? Is there anybody around? And I spotted my neighbour's son coming down the road. And he looked at me, and it's like this kid, he's 14 years old, he knew that something was funny. And I said to him, oh, hi, there you are. And I just follow him. He opens his front door, and I follow him into his house. He shuts the door, and he's like, who's that? And I'm like, I don't know. And I stay in that house.
What a hero, the kid.
And he phoned his parents, first of all.
He was intuitive.
Yeah. And he phoned his parents, first of all, and then sort of checked to see if this guy was around. And it's horrible. I remember telling this story to somebody, and they said, oh, he's probably just a nutter. And I was like, do you know who's most likely to probably jump on you and physically assault you? A nutter. Most people with their mental faculties are not going around stabbing and attacking.
Were they not? They was probably suggesting, let's not assume it's to do with race.
Well, they were just playing it down. They just played it down like,
well, was that
there's
their
probably
point?
just a lunatic. I'm like, right, so let's look at some of the crimes that have happened in recent months with it's always, mental health problem. I'm sure statistically, if you're mad, you're more likely to attack someone than someone who's non-mad. I mean, that's just logical.
But you would suggest, it feels like your friend was trying to play down that it might be someone from a different
they didn't get it.
race whereas for you, that's an essential part of it, you think? That they were maybe an immigrant or hadn't been born here? I
don't know. Look, with this specific case, I don't know, but it's not just an isolated incident.
Well, that's why I think it's important, the stats
regularly
you got.
having sort of strange advances that aren't welcome, that I'm not getting from the Anglo-Saxon native-born community. Actually, it's not even about skin colour. It's not about skin colour. I'm sorry, an Asian or a black man or a white man or whatever who's born and raised here is not going to behave in those ways. They're probably going to follow the social protocols that we've long established in this country, that they know, that they've learned, that they've been brought up with. And that's the difference. This is not about colour of skin. At all.
Yeah, speaking of the protocols of the country and what people have been brought up to do, Mothin Ali. Tell me a bit about Mothin Ali. Do you know about him? The fella who was shouting Allahu Akbar when he got into power, and he got
the Green Party.
The Green Party. Yeah, what's going on with the Greens? What's going on with the left and the Islamo left? And how has this person gotten into power to shout Allahu Akbar?
I don't know. Is the answer. I don't know. I mean, look, I've not looked much into that. And what I try and do is be very evidence-based about when I talk about things rather than just make assertions. So I don't know. What I do understand is this man is actually a hardworking member of his community and well known for doing things within the community.
Yeah.
I think he actually, when there were the Hare Hills riots, was there trying to calm everything down. So let's not jump to conclusions about him, because I don't know. I do think that shouting Allahu Akbar, even though it just means God is great, I do think shouting that on election night, if you have any sort of sensibility towards these things, might think, well, that might look funny, right? That might be interpreted the wrong way. But I don't know. Your other question was if there is now a relationship between the left and Islam. In many respects, it always has been, for various socio-cultural reasons. But, you know, that is a whole broader discussion.
You need another hour.
Yeah, exactly. And something that we need to treat delicately, because when we talk about Islam, that has as many flavors and colors and fragrances and types. And, you know, a lot of what people actually forget, is a lot of perpetrators of, victims of Islamic terrorist attacks and, you know, Islamism are Muslims themselves.
Yeah.
People forget this. And that the more we allow unbridled Islamism to take hold in our country, the more that actually the biggest victim is the Muslim community, both directly and indirectly. And as someone who has lived in countries with huge established Muslim communities, far bigger than ours, you know, they actually do a lot more to address these things. You look at the Gulf states, you look at the UAE, you know, they would have no truck with burqas. They got rid of the Muslim Brotherhood. They, you know, they take this stuff seriously. They know how dangerous it can be. And we're being too lily-livered to really talk about this.
That's pathetic. I can't stand the burqa and all of that. I can't be
It's
having
not
that.
no place in society. I'm sorry. Just that should be gone.
Yeah.
There should be no face coverings in public. Most countries have banned it on security reasons. That's a good enough reason to get rid of it. It's not even cultural reasons. Same with why you're still wearing your COVID mask. That thing was over years ago. You know now when you see someone getting onto the tube, and it's happening more and more regularly with a balaclava or with a COVID mask, that person intends to hurt someone or mug someone. Because why else are they walking around with their face covered
Sometimes
in public?
I think they might have an illness that they don't want to spread, like some sort of strange illness.
I'm sure that all those youths on bicycles wearing COVID masks are being ultra vigilant about not spreading any.
Those ones might not be.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like a sort of 17-year-old, maybe autistic girl.
And so here you are, you're actually using what I said is God-given common sense and gut instincts to be able to rationalize what might be dangerous and what might not.
Yeah. I'm remarkably sensible.
Most of us are as human beings.
Yeah. No, I think so. Did you see there was this, there was a fellow as well, an imam, who wants to buy an island off the coast of Scotland for Sharia law.
Yeah, well, I think the guy who was selling the island has now decided he's not going to sell it to him.
Yeah.
Do you know, what's so strange about this is actually, again, people don't understand some nuances that are taking place in the world right now. And Qatar, as a state, has come under a huge amount of attack for having Hamas headquartered there. This was an arrangement with the CIA, so America could keep eyes on them. You know, so perhaps actually what we should be doing is saying to, you know, people who might be of more extremist bent, fine, go to that island, call it Asbo Island, have every satellite in the world looking down on it and making sure that they don't get off that island, and we know exactly what they're doing.
Is that right about the CIA?
Strategy.
The CIA had people from Hamas go to Qatar so they could sort of watch them.
Of course, Qatar is an ally in many ways. Qatar has its own agenda,
How do we know
does its
that?
own things. I know that because I work closely with people from the intelligence services, and I know full well that is the situation. Very often when you have entities and organizations, you know, one of the reasons, this is interesting culturally and historically, that Britain has often deproscribed certain organizations, not just in terms of Muslim entities, but for instance, the elements of the pro-Khalistan movement have been deprescribed in the UK and nowhere else. It's better if you know where someone is, where they're living. You can see what's going on in their bank accounts. You can tap their phones. You're much safer if you know what they're doing and they're under your watch than if they're not. So there's a lot of things, a lot of devices and tactics used in that regard. So maybe on some level, spin this all the way around and, you know, Islamo Island isn't necessarily a bad idea.
Bloody hell. Where do you stand on Tommy Robinson? He's just had the location of his hotel revealed in the papers. He's not happy about that.
It's funny. Lots of people ask me this. And the truth is, I don't know. It's complicated. Look, I think that when he first burst onto the scene, there was an element of thuggery about it. There was something that made it, he approached things with all the delicacy of a claw hammer.
Yeah.
I think he then went away and learnt lessons and decided he wanted to continue what he was doing and sort of remodeled himself and was making arguments that no one else was prepared to make. And so I started to think, and also, again, snobbery, classism. This man is not a sort of, university educated orator. He doesn't necessarily always get the pleasantries and the protocols and the taboos, and frankly, probably doesn't care about them, which is how he manages to communicate with other people, where our politicians like Sir Keir Starmer clearly are getting that very wrong. And so I think that he's played a very important role in many respects. Now, in recent days, however, when it's quite clear things are absolutely going out of control to a dangerous level, at that point, anybody should be stepping back and not dousing the flames. And I think that he's made some, either they be errors of judgment or reckless moves in the last few days, where as everybody's tempers are at absolute boiling points, he's continued to post things that will continue to spur people on.
What kind of thing has he been posting?
He's continuing, posting things. And I think as well, these people don't fact check. They don't check the source of the material they're going to be reposting. And so posting more and more content, but did you know this woman got stabbed by these 3 Muslims? Things like that. That was a particular story that wasn't even true. When all hell is breaking loose, you don't keep throwing more,
But I think he did say something to suggest, this is no good, these riots.
Yeah, but this is the thing. We are judging Tommy Robinson as if he's Kofi Annan. He's not. Okay, so I think we've got to be realistic about that and realize that the people who like him and are listening to him and are following him are doing so because no one else is talking to them or standing up for them. So I'm not going to stand here and say there's something malign or evil or horrible about that man or reprehensible. I'm also not going to turn around and condone every single thing he's done and say he's a hero. You can have things that are mutually exclusive and true simultaneously, okay? And I think that actually, rather than people, Tommy bashing, perhaps they need to ask why it is that this man has got 1 million followers.
I think they want to believe that because everyone's racist.
Of course they do, but I don't know what. Do you know what I don't understand? With our political classes, the media class, the communications class, as I call them, whether it's marketing, advertising, PR, journalism, the arts. I think in order to get where they are in those particular industries, this is spreading out to most industries now, in order to get where they are, they've had to follow taboos and conventions that change all the time to climb up that greasy pole. And in doing so, they've had to sort of be gaslit and gaslight. And I think a lot of these people have done it to such an extent that they actually can't see anymore. They don't know. When you try speaking to these people and say, but hold on, this is how other people see things. This is how the working class might see things. This is the reality of the situation. Look, there are Muslim militias. Here's some video evidence. They can't see it. They've almost disabled themselves somehow. They've brainwashed themselves. I don't think people like Sir Keir Starmer sitting there going, I'm going to really mess this country up even more by failing to understand the plight of the working classes. I think somehow he is absolutely convinced of what he's saying. And this is the case with so many people out there. They're convinced of these things. They're convinced that there is a huge amount of injustice and that white people are terrible and that minorities are all victims. And, these sort of broad brushstroke, unnuanced generalizations that sort of adhere to some neo-religious moral hierarchy that we've all supposed to have learnt overnight and imbued overnight. They believe in it so much, they cannot see beyond it. They're staggered if you ever put real information in front of their eyes, like the Cass report on puberty blockers.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, science. All of a sudden we can see that we shouldn't be giving experimental medicine to children who are being brainwashed by things on social media. I mean, to me, that's common sense, yet it's amazing quite how many professionals just couldn't see it. And I don't think it's that they didn't want to see it. They just can't. They've gone too far down the rabbit hole somehow.
Yeah, they say journalists are the most overeducated people. Batya Unga Sargon, when she was on, she wrote this great book, an American woman, about the the sort of working class, I should say, and I can't remember what it's called exactly. But she goes around talking to working class people, and just amazing. None of them buy into this woke stuff. They don't feel like they're victims. They just want to work and earn a decent living, and for things to be fair. That's all they want, and it's just the opposite to what the likes of Keir actually imagine of them.
So many of our industries have become unnecessarily professionalized.
Yeah.
Journalism used to be an industry where you could leave school at 15, go be an apprentice at the local newspaper, learn how to do shorthand, shorthand. Thank you. I'm a journalist. I never learned it.
I did. I had
Did
to.
you?
Yeah, I'm overeducated.
Can you still do it now?
No, I could give it a go. It's like all the dots and beeps and
Where
things.
did you? What was your journalism school?
Oh, Lambeth College. It was like a free one.
Oh, rubbish! It wasn't Cardiff or City then. It wasn't one of the big boys.
Is that one of the big? Is that like a big? Yeah,
there's like the Oxford and Cambridge of journalism. Right?
But I get to have like a hard knocks story.
Right.
I got through it despite going to a really posh private school beforehand.
But back in the day, journalism was something working classes did actually.
Yeah.
Proper hacks. And those people are invested in their communities. They listen to people. They can communicate with people. They have a journalistic instinct. Now it's become professionalized. And so a bit like when people went to work in the city as traders and things like that. It could be barrow boys. And go make a load of money because you had a good instinct for this. Now everyone has to have gone through university, and not just that, compete with people from all around the world for a lot of these jobs as well. And so everyone's been sort of pushed through this same prism that ends up being an echo chamber, highly influenced by wealth and by class. And also what's staggering is the amount of people who come from a working class background and suddenly find themselves in the middle class and have sort of surrounded themselves with the communities and the trappings of the middle class and can't ever look behind them at what they once were. They lose it somehow. They pull the ladder up. That I always find very strange when they suddenly become ashamed of it. I'm kind of the opposite. I'm a lorry driver's daughter, and you'll never take that away from me. I feel happier in a Weatherspoons, quite frankly, than I do in a private members club. They're my people.
Yeah. Well, good on you. And on that note, I've got one more question for you. But first, where can people find your work?
Gosh, I don't know. Twitter, I guess. No, Talk. I mean, look, I'm a presenter on Talk, and my shifts move around the place. But Fridays 10 till 1 GMT. On Talk TV. I'm there live. You can watch it on YouTube, or you can get the app and all the rest of it. Basically just Googled me. I don't really have any stuff myself that I've established.
Well, excellent talk.
I am going to establish things. But on Twitter, I am that Alex woman. And that's where I do most of my stuff, I guess. I post my stuff on there. I hate social media viscerally. I'm on Instagram, it's almost sort of gritting my teeth. I did set up a TikTok account thinking, well, this is where the kids are. I better do this. And then I've just deleted it.
It's a waste of time.
It's not just a waste of time. It's very dangerous. I disagree fundamentally with that app and the sort of effect it's having. Again, a whole nother discussion.
Yes, another podcast entirely. Who's a heretic you admire?
Nigel Farage. Of course. He was my boss. He was one of my best friends. I was brought up under his wing. I learned from the best. And I think what people don't understand about him is he's not in it for fame. He's not in it to grandstand and for attention. He's not in it for a joke. He's in it because it's almost like sort of a martyrdom. It's a real belief. And a bit like me, he will just say, I've got to do this and it doesn't matter what happens to me as a consequence because this is too important. The few times that I've seen him cry have been standing in the trenches in eastern France on the Belgian border of the World War I battlefields, because he's a fantastic historian, Nigel. He used to do battlefield tours and recounting some of the incredible stories of the men who gave up their lives so that we could be free, watching things like D-Day. He loves this country. He loves the people of this country. He loves people. There are very few politicians who will go out and glad hand and meet the public. And he's someone whose personal safety is very often at risk. And he does it. Why? Because he loves it. Because he loves us. And not enough people get that about him. In fact, he's labelled in completely the opposite way. And I think a lot of people, when they start getting the mud thrown at them, and this is why I'd always say, let's be careful before we judge Tommy Robinson. Because a lot of people who do this, they might not be the most eloquent. They might not be the most polished, but it comes with a huge amount of sacrifice and self-risk. You block yourself out of having certain careers, being able to attend certain venues, having certain friends. There's a huge sacrifice that comes with it. So most people who are fighting the good fight are doing it from love.
I think so too. People, go and follow Alex Phillips on X and talk. Go see her videos. She's a wonderful orator, as I almost said at the beginning of this video all that time ago. Keep watching this channel. There'll be links, by the way, for Alex below. Hit the like button. Keep watching the channel. There'll be a similar video right here.